Good evening and welcome back, Poetry Lovers. It is I, ZM Wise, and here I am with another terrific interview just for you. Tonight we have Khalypso. Khalypso is a Sacramento-based activist, actor, and poet. They are fat, black, neurodivergent, queer, and an agender badass. Their work can be found in Francis House, Rigorous Journal, Blood Orange Review, and Shade Journal, as well as a few others. Their chapbook, The Hottentot Lights the Gas Herself, was a runner-up for the 2018 Two Sylvia's Chapbook Prize. They are the 2019 Sacramento Youth Poet Laureate, a Leo Virgo cusp, in need of more friends, and you can find them on Twitter at Khalypso the Poet. Khalypso, thank you very, very much for being on the show. How are you feeling today?
I feel pretty good. I just ate. I'm about to eat some more. Yeah. I haven't been up very long.
Well, tis the weekend after all. Now, please tell us about the major accomplishment landing the 2019 Sacramento Youth Poet Laureate, and tell us some of the highlights of that.
Well, it was a pretty intense sort of process, just because I spent a lot of time agonizing over whether or not I would get it. Like I wasn't sure how much of a chance I would have for a while, just because, like imposter syndrome and all that. But I think in Sacramento, I have a different perspective from most poets here, and not in a bad way, but just I read a lot more poetry and sort of engage with the craft, I think, from a different sort of perspective than most other people here have.
I see.
To have that sort of accepted through the city or validated through the city the way it was,
Oh, of course. And so tell us the genesis behind the Hottentot lights the gas for herself, or lights the gas herself rather. Tell us about the making of that.
So for a lot of people that don't know, the term Hottentot came from, I think it's Dutch. I think it's a Dutch word, or French or something like that. It's a derogatory term for African women with a lot of cleavage and a lot of slick backsides. Not slick backsides, thick backsides with thick assets. And it was Sarky Bartman, or Sarah Bartman, as most people know her, the Hottentot Venus, who was the most famous for this. She was a Khoikhoi woman from South Africa, and she was kidnapped from her country and taken up to Europe and forced to perform in these highly sexualized jungle fever, black people in cages sort of thing. And I feel like as black women, black people who are female-bodied, because I don't identify as a woman. I identify as agender, but I was socialized as a girl and a woman for a short amount of time. So it's black people who are female-bodied are sort of sexualized from birth and treated as objects in different ways, as pawns or as fodder for jokes or as very real, tangible victims of violence and coercion and just destruction in general. And I think that's what the Hottentot represents to me. And so I kind of wrote about how my life sort of, all the trauma I experienced and all the disappointments and the pain that I went through when I was young at the hands of white men specifically was what sort of guided the path for the poems and the chapbook.
So, that sounds incredibly intense, and I'd very much look forward to purchasing a copy for myself so I could see for myself. In the arts, whether it's poetry, music, film, visual art, or whatnot, who are some of your key inspirations, and what are some of your key inspirations?
It's a lot of like abstract things, and then it's a lot of like other people's work. I find a lot of inspiration in history, just like actual history, like events. I find a lot of inspiration in charting the intersections of one's political identity and how they love, or what kind of love has been given to them because of that political identity. I'm very interested in the intersections of the human condition and love. Another thing I would say is my inspiration is justice. I think in my poems I write a lot. Even if the world in which the poem exists that I have written is not fair and just, I think in every poem I try to bring the energy of desiring a world that is just, or pushing for a world that is just, or imagining a world that is just. I think my poems are always seeking to equalize something, and that's, I think, my key inspiration. Yeah. It's like other artists, I think I could go on for days about that, but I think my biggest inspiration artistically would have to be Amy Winehouse, because she was vulnerable in everything she sang and did, or if not vulnerable, she was honest in sort of like her position and what she was going through at all times. And I think I strive to do that in my work at all times. I strive to be honest about where I'm at and what's really going on inside. One thing that does really, really inspire me is reading the poetry of people who are older than me, who have sort of been through the things that I've been through and sort of come out on the other side. Simone Felix is a huge inspiration to me. I love her work. Pretty much all the poets, pretty much all of the, I don't know how you pronounce it, Biotis creative poets, like Hanif Abdur-Rakib is my favorite author, like, ever. It's him, and then it's V.C. Andrews, and then it goes back to poets. But, yeah, I really, really admire, like, Hanif, Eve Ewing, Kava Akbar, Dinesh Smith, of course, Human Wind, Jackie Germain. I'm missing some other people. I think. Who else? Who else is in this? Well, like, just all those people. You'll have to forgive me. I'm kind of tired. I worked a lot yesterday, but yeah. I really, really admire Hannah Cohen. Logan February is a great friend of mine, and I will always champion their work. Someone I just found out about was Cara Jackson, and we've talked a couple of times, and she seems really, really cool. She seems very nice, and I love her work. I looked her up, and I realized that I had read one of her poems before, but I hadn't known it was hers, but it was. I really, really admire Sierra Freeman, Rachel McKibbins. Those people are huge inspirations to me. I call Sierra Freeman auntie. Natachi Mez and I came up through the same high school together, and she is just like my sister. And her work is just fantastic. I think she needs to put out a book, like, immediately. I would write her book for her if I could, but then it wouldn't be her book, so I'm just gonna have to keep pushing her for it. Yeah, I think that's a good list of inspirations. Oh, Paige Lewis. I love Paige Lewis's work. Paige Lewis is probably, like, my second favorite poet. I think it's Hanifa Durkheeb, and then it's Paige Lewis, and then it's Denez Smith. Oh, no. Paige and Denez are equal. Paige and Denez are equal, yeah.
Well, that sounds like a fabulous cornucopia of people, and I'm sure that they would appreciate the mention as well. Now, when did you first know that you were destined to be a creator? What did it feel like when you first started writing?
You know, what's funny is I can't really answer that question. I don't want to sound like a prick. I'm sorry if I sound like a prick. But when I was a baby, I was drawing on papers and folding the papers together and giving them to my parents as books. Like, no words, no, like, sort of like explanation, but it was just like, I was just like expressing myself in like stories and giving them to people. And I did that up through like preschool and up through like kindergarten. And then, you know, I learned how to write. And in kindergarten, I wasn't writing poems. I was writing stories, but they always felt familiar. It was almost like, I feel like storytelling is a language I learned separate from English somehow. Like, separate from language. And I don't know where it comes from, but I think that it's never really been a question whether I was a creator or not. I think the question was always, what am I going to create? And they read us poems in kindergarten, but never really explained what poems were, but they seemed cool. They were different from stories. They seemed to have a different angle. And, you know, we read a couple more poems in first grade, but then in second grade, they started to make it kind of, I wouldn't say a big deal. It was just like there was a poem with every reading unit that we had. And I really liked poems. I just sort of like latched onto them as soon as I understood where they came from and what the possibilities were. I latched onto poems, and poems became the way that I journaled. But I was always using like similes and metaphors and all that stuff. Although, you know, of course, if you're like in second grade, it's not going to be that good. So, you know, those poems weren't that great. But I was exploring. I was sort of kind of getting my feet under me creatively. And so I just started writing poems. And I did that forever, never stopped. It turned into different things, and I started sharing it more widely, at a certain age in which I felt like I had developed some skill, comparing it to what I knew poetry could be. And, so like, it's, I guess what I'm saying is, there was never an aha moment for knowing I was going to be a creative. There was never any sort of, epiphany. I think I carried my way of expressing myself from infancy to, a more organized consciousness, and it just kind of was. It's almost like, if you grow up as a kid in the church, growing up believing or being told that there is a God, at least when you're a kid, it doesn't ever dawn on you. There's never an aha moment of like, oh, that's what God is. It's just kind of like God always was, if you grow up that way. And then, people break out of that as they sort of learn and their brains develop, and they, decide to explore their spirituality more and question things and challenge things. But yes, I guess I'm saying art was never, being creative was never challenged for me, or not accessible to me.
I see. So, yeah, that was one of the most surreal things I've ever heard. Like, you as an infant folding books without any words. That's so brilliant. That's almost like, here you go, mother and father, you figure out the words to be put in. And
for toddlers.
This is sort of a question within a question, I suppose you could say. You said that at a very young age, storytelling not only was a different language in of itself, but it almost sounded familiar in a way to you. Could you please elaborate on that?
Well, I guess maybe it, I don't know what I believe in as far as like God, but like I do believe that there is a higher something, and I think that some people are destined to serve that power in different ways. And I think my way, I don't know if it's chosen or if it's like given, but like my way of serving that power is, I think, using my voice, lending my experiences to the narrative, the great, the eternal conversation about what we are meant to be and what we as human beings are supposed to be doing,
Oh yes, absolutely. I really like that, the eternal conversation. I may or may not steal that from you, but I'm going to give you proper credit, of course. So, how does being non-binary tie into your work and into your writing in general?
being called a girl always felt weird, but for a while it didn't bother me. Until one day it just sort of started to, and I was a senior in high school, and it just, none of it made sense. So, but you know, I had never, well, my best friend at the time was non-binary, but the way that they explain their sort of gender wasn't what I was experiencing. So I felt like I couldn't have been non-binary. So I went kind of sort of looking, like, and I couldn't really explain it at first because I was just so young. I didn't have the vocabulary, but I Googled feeling like nothing, and I got results for like depression and like mental illness, and I was like, no, that's not what I'm talking about right now. That's not what I mean in that moment. But I just kept doing these like weird Google searches, and it was like, I'd be like, non-binary, nothing. Or like, I'd be like, non-binary, non-binary gender types or something. But, you know, I never pulled up like any results that applied to me. So I was very confused, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I really am, you know, just like a girl, and I'm just like feeling weird. But I finally said, what did I say? I said like non-binary, not a boy, not a girl. And there was a result for like agender. And I hadn't heard that term before or seen that term before, so I clicked on it, and I read the description, and I was like, yo, that's me. Like that's what's going on in there. And when I had that sort of like identity to latch onto, my true identity, I think it unlocked sort of this like pressure cooker in me. Just, it like took this pressure cooker off of different feelings and different thoughts that I had sort of like compartmentalized before I could even process, in a way. So they were just kind of stuck in there. And I think my writing sort of reflects that wonder, that sort of openness. At least that's what I hope for. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely beautiful. And yeah, and as you said before, I'm sure that reflects a lot of your pieces, and it's sort of channeled into certain stanzas and whatnot. Now, last year you participated in the National Poetry Slam in Chicago. Please tell us what that was like.
It was fucking wild. It was, woo. Okay, well, I'll start with like the actual poems. Like, the poems were great. The poems were awesome. All the teams just sort of like brought it. Like, they just brought their A game, and it was like magnificent to watch, like, people just, like, be in their element and do what they love. The sort of, like, political-ish bureaucracy type stuff that happened there was pretty intense, too, but I'm not going to get into it. They're not hosting one this year. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on, but, so while I was in Chicago for NPS, I kind of, like, you know, I didn't want to do too many slam events, like I didn't want to stick to, like, just NPS. I kind of wanted to see Chicago, and I kind of sort of got to do that because Fatima Asghar's book release party at Volumes Book Cafe had, like, so many of my favorite poets there that I got to say hello to for the first time ever, and it was like, you know, just like, wow. Some of them knew who I was, which is, like, always a good feeling. I met Paige Lewis. I met Kala Akbar. They are two of the most wonderful people. They're, like, the cutest couple ever. I want them to adopt me. I'm too old to be adopted, but no. But, like, in all seriousness, they are two of the nicest people I've ever met. I met Fatima Asghar, and she's so nice and very sweet and very, very smart. Like, you could just, like, everything she says is just like, wow, heck yeah. I met Franny Choi, and that was awesome. I love Franny Choi's poetry. I saw Dinesh Smith again. I've seen Dinesh Smith before. I met Dinesh Smith for the first time at Brave New Voices, and that was awesome. And Hugh Min Win, and Paul Tran. I like Paul Tran a lot. Yeah.
That experience sounds so amazing. Oh, I am so jealous right now. What now? So you said you got to explore Chicago. What did you get to see?
Dog, I went to, like, so I went to that silver thing that you, like, go under, and it's like a whole mirror. Like, I was in that area, and I saw those, like, fountain things. Those, like, big, tall... Do you know what I'm talking about? Those big, tall shooter... like, tower things.
Yes, I know exactly what you're referring to.
And I went to Harold's Chicken. Man, Harold's Chicken is so good. Dog, I was like, what? That chicken was so good. I don't know what they did to it, but it was so good.
That is so great. Yeah, and this is probably going to sound like a sin, but me being a native, I've never been to Harold's before, but you make it sound so delicious. I'm going to have to try it sometime.
Okay.
So, tell us, give us a little sneak peek as far as your future projects are concerned. What can we expect in the near future?
So, I wrote The Hottentot Lights the Gas Herself. I wrote a sort of kind of companion piece called The Boys from Suburbia that kind of goes along with the themes in Hottentot, but in a more specific and more, I think, focused way. Hottentot kind of bounces out into all sorts of territories and deals with so many things, and Boys from Suburbia is just a very succinct, like, more bullseye, dart shooter type precision. And I wrote those two, and I actually went through some, like, really, really weird, like, relationship drama that is, like, I talk about it on Twitter. I'm not going to talk about it on here. It takes too long. But I went through some weird relationship drama that, like, basically inspired me to write a bunch of poems after songs written by Fiona Apple, who is another big, 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 big inspiration of mine. I'm a huge, huge Fiona Apple fan. You know, I read all of her interviews, and, like, I listen to all of her, like, live performances. She's just, like, the best. So I don't know what that's going to turn into, if it's going to turn into anything, because the poems right now are, like, kind of suffering from the overwhelming, I think, shroud of catharsis that is throughout them right now. I think I gotta inject a little bit more craft into them before they can be presentable to the public. But those have been really fun to write, and I really enjoy charting the way the themes fit together and how they sort of sit along each other's edges, in a way. Yeah. So that's about what I've got as far as work upcoming, that's, like, planned out. I don't usually plan out my writing, or, you know, I don't, like, really hold poems in my head too much. But, yeah, this is pretty cool.
That is awesome. Well, now you have me in suspense. I can't wait to read the Boys Suburbia. Definitely. So, now, there's no right or wrong answer to this question. This is purely based off of what you feel and how others might benefit from this. Whether it's in the writing community, visual art community, the musical community, the film community, just arts in general, what could greatly be improved, and how would you go about doing so?
I think the biggest thing is that no arts community right now, I think not even the poetry community, wants to have an honest conversation about representation and diversity and equity, true equity in this nation with anything is not, I think, it's not as close on the horizon, I think, as people would like for it to seem, or like for it to be, really. I think that we need to take a true look at what marginalized communities actually deserve, what they should get to do, what they shouldn't have to endure, and how they should express themselves, and no one wants to have that honest conversation, and it's too whatever.
Oh, definitely. I couldn't have said it better myself, actually. Now, if you were to give some advice, some sage advice to an aspiring creative, if they had just mountains of self-doubt, how would you, in your advice, how would you help them over that hurdle? What would you say to them to sort of encourage them to let nothing stand in their way?
I think over everything, do what your heart is telling you to do. And I mean, in terms of like what you're producing. I was at the first open mouth annual writing retreat with Hanif Abdurraqib and Eloisa Amesqua, who are both just two of the best writing. Two of the best poets out here writing in our present day, in this moment, and Hanif kind of like he didn't like go on and on about it, but he sort of talked to us about, like, you know, it's okay to follow your artistic obsessions, that, you know, if something is really just sort of pressing on your shoulders or sitting atop your head, weighing you down, you know, you've gotta write about that. You've got to get that out of you so that you can move on to the next thing and bring your whole present self to the next thing. He said it better than me, but yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, no, I certainly bought it. I think if I were that aspiring creator, I would definitely take that, and I would say, yes, now I can do this. For sure. It really does take heart, like true heart. Now, would you like to indulge us with a few of your poems?
How many poems do you want me to do?
If you have about 2 or 3 would be great.
3? Okay. Let's see. Here's my first ghazal. My first ghazal that I've ever written. I wrote about a month or so ago. It's called Ghazal for W, 2014. The old story our mothers kissed into our skulls is still the same. We ask a man to love us and it always ends the same. We ask a man to drown our parched eyes with kisses. When our hearts drink seduction's liquor, the way ends always the same. Starving hands searching the earth's flesh for some kind of warmth. We always been the music sheltered in an Alabama night's crackling petals. The screaming winds always the same. Our gyrations burn a new axis into every gold thing our parents wear to forget their poverty. Memories unfold themselves and we find our first lies, indiscretion and shared sweat, the first doctrine that told us all sins the same. In one gasping thought, we remember why we never fell in love. You're only home for the holidays. We don our clothes, say goodbye. The cold finds our diverting footsteps, freezing. The wind's always the same.
loved it.
I'll do two of the Fiona Apple poems. So each poem starts off with an epigraph that I usually sing, but I'm not going to sing today because I just had a cold, so I'm just going to say, oh, your gaze is dangerous, and you feel your space so sweet. If I let you get too close, you'll set your spell on me. Fiona Apple. That night, we swerved between lanes on Highway 50, careless and lusting. I couldn't have escaped you if I wanted to. Not with your fingers stroking my hair, your selfish mouth charting my insecurities with kisses. I saw the world in your eyes. Every garden I've tilled since has bloomed with your cologne, a mausoleum of futile tears. Once, you held a morning glory to my nose, called it sweet darling, and told me it was your favorite. I couldn't smell anything. For the whole world, I would have called it the dearest scent. So I did. I want to be ready to love you, but you've already passed. Like a storm yearning to move on to more fearful seas. Here, the water is clear and calm. Here, I am not afraid to be alone. The closest you ever came to holding my love in your palms was that night in the woods. The calm reverence I cast upon your ribs, the gentle ministrations with which I attended to you. You were so precious in the moon's cursory light, you could have been a hero. We held our imaginary future like a globe, turning the possibilities around and around until we spilled against each other, sharing breath and hope like our bodies have forgotten them both. You denied me to your wife, called me a liar like you didn't leave fingerprints on the small of my back, across my cheeks, inside of me. You denied me the world because you'd already given it to her. Someday you'll tell your children you've only ever loved their mother. You and I know better. We know the woods now like the backs of our entangled fingers. We know the world, and we shared it, if only for a moment.
Wow, I don't know what to say. I'm genuinely speechless right now. That was beautiful. Wow, my goodness.
Do I have any more? Let's see. I think I might have one more poem. It's a little shorter, and it's a little more abstract, but okay. This poem is called "The World is So Untamed." You ask the niggas to dance and all they do is shake their fists. You love an animal of the mountains long before you face the people. The old saying demands a bloodied, wailing cargo for the sake of a flower's planting. Savage girls kiss their brothers with tongue and clenched fists, equally ready to fight and fall. You name the wilted rainbow of brethren simply for their bulky, flittering tongues. Paint them a sepia spectrum of glaring eye and limp, twisted kiss, eternal damnation for the sin of being born. You pour your tears into only the most fertile soil, make a defunct wishing well of your polished coins and soiled satin gloves. God, as thou art in heaven, be always a fence and a set of welcoming, warm arms that will always look like mine.
Wow, if if a poem could speak revolution, I think this one would be it. Good. If a poem could speak revolution, I think this one would be it for sure. Goodness gracious, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. So, do you want to go ahead and take this time to plug yourself? I mean, I know I mentioned it in the intro, but where can we find you? We want to hear it from you.
Sure. So, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram under the same at KHALYPSO, the poet, THEPOET. And then on Facebook, it's just Khalypso, KHALYPSO. It's a page that you can follow me on. If you find me on Facebook and you try to send me a friend request on my personal page, if I haven't heard of you, I'm probably going to decline it. So just, keep that in mind. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. That's about all I have.
Well, thank you very, very much, Khalypso, for taking this time to be on the channel, and I wish you nothing but the best for your amazing work, and hope to hear from you again quite soon. Come back anytime. Poetry lives, long live the arts. If you are listening and you were interested in being on my YouTube channel for a little interview or perhaps a mini reading, please send me a direct message on Twitter at ZMWisePoet, and we will talk. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening. Well, thank you very, very much, Khalypso, for taking the time to speak with us tonight. We've certainly enjoyed your presence, and we thank you for sharing your poems. And everyone, look out for their chapbook, The Hottentot Lights the Gas herself, also a runner-up for the